government back to the people and out of the hands of dictators. And we're here to say that the era of Trump and Zeldin and Molinaro, just jump on a bus and head down to Florida where you belong, okay? Get out of town. Get out of town. Because you don't represent our values. You are not New Yorkers. You're not New Yorkers.
Well, that was a clip of Governor of New York, Kathy Hochul, basically saying, if you don't like Democrats, if you don't vote for me, get out of the state. That's an unusual way to treat a large chunk of the population. Just because they didn't vote for you doesn't mean you're not their governor too. Well, there's one Republican in New York who I know will not be leaving the state because of Governor Hochul's order, and that's a young up-and-comer from New York City. In fact, she is the New York City minority whip on city council, council member Inna Vernikov, who's become, I think, a bit of a social media star, but not in a shallow manner like, say, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. As I've watched Council Member Vernikov over the last year, I see someone who's deeply engrossed in the most important issues of the day. And I find that remarkable, given that her job is mainly to serve a particular district in New York. But so many of the battles she fights in New York, I think, are thematically of interest to anyone around America, or indeed even to us up here in Canada. So it's a delight to finally meet and talk to via Skype Council Member Inna Vernikov from the 48th District of New York City. What a pleasure to meet you. Thanks for taking the time with us.
Good to meet you. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, it's my pleasure. I mean, I think my first question is, how do you exist? I mean, how did you become a Republican in one of the most Democrat leaning cities in America? I mean, you're supposed to be a Democrat. You yourself came to America as an immigrant. You are in a city of immigrants. Aren't you supposed to be a Hillary Clinton Democrat?
Yeah, so it's like Republicans are like dinosaurs, right, in New York City. No, I mean, look, when we came to America, which was in 1996 when I was 12 years old, I think everybody was pretty much a Democrat. And I think it was a very different Democratic Party back then in 96 than it is now. This is a totally different party today. I think it's a party that's moving in a very different direction. I think it's pretty much un-American. You know, I came here as a child, and the notion that was really instilled in me was the American dream, the land of opportunity. You know, things were based on merit, that if you work hard here, you can attain anything. This is a very, very different party today. It's a party that's moving towards communism, which is a place where we escaped. I came from the former Soviet Union, which is now Ukraine. And we escaped all of that and came to a land of freedom and opportunity. And I think that this is such a different place now. And you mentioned a couple of things about what I'm supposed to be doing and what I'm really doing. And I know that, of course, a major part of my job is to, make sure the streets are clean and there's enough traffic lights. And of course, we're doing that very well. But I also didn't do it just for that. I did it to stand up for America, for American values, for what America once was, and to speak out for my community. This is a very conservative Republican community district that I represent, and they're very angry about the Democratic Party and what the Democratic Party is doing to this country, to our state and our city. And so I'm here to do that, and that's why you hear me voicing my opinions on many of the things and criticizing our politicians for the way they're running our city, our state, and our country.
Huh. Well, listening to you talk about how coming from a former Soviet communist regime has informed your views on freedom, it reminds me of some of the young Latino and Latina candidates for the Republicans. And again, those are people who are supposed to vote Democrat, but they see in the language of today's Democrats the language of authoritarianism, of big government, of violation of civil liberties, of socialism. And I think one of the reasons why newcomers to America are, in my view, thankfully, tracking towards the right parties on the right is because they know how this movie ends. They know how terrible it can become if you do give government certain powers. Where are you on civil liberties issues? For 2 years here in Canada, we've had very abusive lockdowns. New York City was was pretty bad too. What's your take on how the government responded to the pandemic? I'm of the view that the lockdowns were in fact more punitive and more damaging than the pandemic itself. How do you see it?
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, look, the first 2 weeks of the pandemic, I'll tell you honestly, I was pretty freaked out. I did all the things they said on CNN and everywhere else. You know, I sanitized my doors and washed my vegetables 3 times. So I was pretty freaked out. I think we didn't know a lot about the pandemic. We didn't have proper therapeutics. But I think after some point, you know, after months and months have passed and we know a lot about this disease, this virus, and we know how to treat it, and there, you know, so many people already had it and have immunity to it, that at some point these mandates and lockdowns became incredibly unreasonable. And we can understand why people feel that there's major government overreach in these mandates and the lockdowns and just all of the things that they're obligating us to do. And I'll give you an example right now. The CDC came out with new guidelines just recently. I think it was about 2 weeks ago. Very quietly, no media really reported on this, but basically what they're saying is that if you had COVID, it has essentially the same effect as if you were vaccinated, right? And then we still have these mandates in our city where if you're not going to get the vaccine, if you're a city worker, you're going to get fired. So right now we have firefighters, cops, and teachers. We have about 1,300 teachers on the verge of getting fired if they don't take the vaccine. And so since the CDC came out with these new guidelines that went quiet, it is completely unreasonable to still have these mandates. If you didn't need this vaccine to begin with, then why would you fire people for not getting the vaccine they never needed in the first place? It makes absolutely no sense. We actually have a meeting with the mayor of New York City shortly. We already have the meeting. It's set up, and we're going to talk to the mayor very seriously about the vaccine mandates. We're going to really ask for him to eliminate the mandate. It's really no longer needed.
What you just saw was an excerpt from my nightly show, the Ezra Levant Show. Every weekday, I do a monologue. Usually it's about half an hour. Then I interview an interesting guest, and then we read my hate mail or my fan mail, whichever is more fun. It's only available behind a paywall, though. That's how we pay our bills here at Rebel News. We don't take a dime from Justin Trudeau. But the good news is it's only $8 a month, about half the price of Netflix. And in addition to my nightly show, you also get weekly shows from 4 other friends here at Rebel News. So you're getting 36 shows a month just for $8. I think it's worth it. And even if you're not quite sure, do it anyways, because we rely on viewers like you to keep us free and independent. I promise you I'll never take a dime from Trudeau. Just go to rebelnewsplus.com and click subscribe. Thanks.